Hello everyone, in today's video we're going to be talking about Death Stranding 2 and how it's going to be having a skip boss battles mode, which is basically like an easy mode slash story mode. We're going to be on PC Gamer today. This is by Elliot Gould. Thank you for the article. It'll be linked down in the description if you'd like to check it out for yourself. The title goes, Hideo Kojima confirms an easy mode for Death Stranding 2 which allows players to skip boss battles and let them read about it instead. That does sound quite nice. Now, honestly, I'm totally down for like story mode style, whether call it easy mode or story mode things, where it just like kind of lets you go through the game without too much difficulty, because honestly I think there is one of the bigger problems I feel like that a lot of either game devs or just gamers in general forget is that most people play video games for fun and to ignore the real world, and having a game constantly beat you up isn't for everyone, and it's why I think difficulty modes are a great thing for video games. And sometimes, especially for a game like Death Stranding, where I feel like a lot of people are playing the game for the story. I'm sure there are a lot of people who enjoy the gameplay of Death Stranding, but I feel like the majority of people, or at least a significant amount of them, are there for to see what Hideo Kojima has just like cooked up. So skipping the gameplay elements, or the more difficult gameplay elements, I would say, is probably a good thing, especially for a game like Death Stranding. And for the sequel, it makes total sense, especially considering how you're not really playing Death Stranding for combat. Let's be real. Like, you're playing the game to be a delivery person and have a crazy Hideo Kojima filled story. So it makes sense. Before we get deeper into the article, I'd like to remind everyone, please subscribe to the channel. We're trying to hit 1,000 subscribers, and once we do, I'll be doing a Q&A video. If anyone is interested in that, please subscribe. Comment down below what you guys think about this whole easy mode thing, if you agree with it or not. New information about Death Stranding 2 is a little sparse, unless you count all the celebrity appearances on Hideo Kojima's social media accounts, but Kojima does sprinkle in a couple of details about the upcoming game between his celebrity cameos and movie reviews, like the fact that Death Stranding 2 will have an easy mode. A Koji 10 post translated by Geki, Games Radar, reveals that Death Stranding 2 will have a new special feature to help players who are not so experienced at action games. This special feature is a boss battle skip, something that will allow players who are less interested in fighting and more interested in story just to fast forward through the gritty action with ease. And honestly, I think that's a really good decision, especially considering how I feel like the action sequences of Death Stranding specifically aren't exactly what most people are there for. Now, I'm sure, like I said, there's so many different types of gamers. There's people going to enjoy it, some people who aren't. So I feel like just having more options is a good thing. And I feel like people who are going to complain about this, they're not going to turn it on anyway, so don't turn it on. Like, I don't see a reason to be angry about this, because if you don't like it, don't turn it on. It's quite simple. It's not like they're making the boss battles easier for people. It's just a game mode that skips it for people who don't want to play it, which makes a lot of sense in my opinion. I'd be lying if that didn't sound appealing. I've been in countless boss fights where I wish that it could be all over with a push of a button. I could just carry on with my journey, but that mostly happens in FromSoft games where the whole point is the grueling boss battles, and I'd be too stubborn to skip them even if I had the option. It's true. I think like Dark Souls style games, the whole point is the challenge. For the most part, like 98% of the game, the whole point of it is that you're supposed to be beaten down and you're supposed to overcome the challenges. But Death Stranding isn't that kind of game, so I totally understand that this game is definitely a better choice for a game mode like that. Or game mode. Yeah, it is game mode, yeah. But Death Stranding 2 is a very different game from a FromSoft game. Yes, there are some weird monsters and story as well, creative, but the focus isn't on battles or builds here. It's all about the narrative and experiencing it for yourself. So while the fights in Death Stranding weren't very hard at all, I think it'd be a great idea to make said story mode more accessible to those who perhaps aren't used to facing up against bosses on a regular or semi-regular basis, or just don't want to. Honestly, if I was to play Death Stranding, I'd probably have this mode on, because I am not interested in Death Stranding as an action game. I'm interested in it in the gameplay of Death Stranding, of the whole like a delivery guy simulator of like having tons of packages on you, and the terrain movement and the story. And Hideo Kojima, because he's Hideo Kojima, so who really knows what he's thinking? It's not like you miss out on anything important if you choose the easy mode. Yes, maybe you won't get the winner's high from defeating a difficult enemy, but you'll be able to read about the fight afterwards after skipping the fight. You'll have an image and some text describing about the battle, kind of like a short story. That's really cool, honestly. I like that. There's a lot of support for the idea, but not everyone's happy about it. For the usual you cheated yourself reason, I don't like it. One player says learning is half the battle. If it is okay if they fought on an easier difficulty, but don't take away the whole fight with a novelized scene. And to those people, I say, why do you care? Like, it's the person's decision to do this. Now, the only reason I would slightly agree with them is that if that said same person who turned off the boss battles and said one of the reasons they didn't like the game was too easy or something like that, then I'd be like, okay, but like you were on the easier difficulty. Of course the game was too easy. You made it that way. So that's the only time I'd be like, okay, I kind of understand your reasoning there. But like, if the person just wants to experience the story, then just let them experience the story. There's no you cheated yourself. If the person is not going to like the game because of the boss battles, then they didn't cheat themselves. They actually made it better for themselves. More options like this is not a bad thing. The only time it becomes a bad thing is if those said people start complaining about difficulty about a game being too easy when you play on the easy difficulty. That's when it's like, okay, like what? Like, that's where I start having question marks about like decisions like that. But generally, I don't feel like those people are complaining about those types of things. I feel like this is like, it's almost like gatekeeping. Like, gamers feel the need that if you're not playing on the hardest difficulty, you're not a true gamer. And to that, I say, you're just stop. Just stop. It's just not true. There's tons of people that play video games on easy mode, and they are just as much a gamer as you are. You're just more tryhard. That's all that means. You're just a bigger tryhard. Quite a few others seem to share a similar view, but I really don't see the issue. People should be left alone to experience any game they want. The idea that there is only one way to experience a game is boring and restrictive way to look at games. Let them skip the boss battles or don't. It's your game. Yeah, I agree with the writer. It's like I said, I only have a problem with this when that said person who turns the difficulty to easiest then complains about the game being too easy. But I feel like that is a pretty rare circumstance, but that might happen. So that's the only time I kind of have a problem with these types of difficulty modes. Other than that, though, I just think having easy modes and stuff like that, it's totally fine. Honestly, I prefer the story mode version of easy mode, because I also think like the way people it kind of reminds me of like the way the original Dooms put the difficulty setting on, because it was like, you know, grandma mode or whatever. Like they basically insulted you if you didn't play it on an easier mode. And I just feel like there's no reason to play a game on harder difficulties if you don't want that. You know what I mean? So, especially in single player games, it should be, for a lot of games, I feel it should be you should be able to customize it to what you want. Unless, of course, there are games that do have very specific ideas, like for instance Dark Souls and stuff like that. But I feel like game by game basis, it makes sense to make your difficulty depending on how the devs want the difficulty to be. There is, like the author said, there is no one way to experience a game. There are people who play Dark Souls, and there's people who say magic is easy mode, and there's people who only play magic. There's people who only use melee weapons. There's people who only use bows and stuff like that. Like, even within a game that is very specific in the type of experience they want, there's still multiple ways to experience it. So I feel like people being angry about this or frustrated about this is a non-issue. People, like, this is not a problem. If you don't like it, don't turn it on. If they were forcing people to do this, then it'd be a different story, you know? But then you could also say, like, if that's what the devs want, that's what the devs want. But obviously that's not the way this game is. They just understand that the majority, I feel like at least 50% of the players probably don't actually care about the action scenes. I'm pretty confident in that, because Death Stranding, you're not there for the action stuff. You're there for the story, for the dialogue, and for the... I don't even know, like, it's not a walking simulator, but like that aspect of the game of the terrain movement and battling, like how many packages you have. So that's the real gameplay, I would say the core gameplay of Death Stranding. So it makes sense that to have a mode where you just say, okay, I don't want to play these action scenes. I mean, from Death Stranding 1, the action scenes didn't look bad, but I can understand a type of player that would turn them off, because that's not why they're there. So it makes sense for Death Stranding 2 to have this mode, and it makes sense. I agree with it, honestly. I think it is a good addition to the game. And for the people who don't like it, just don't have it on. Like, you know, play on your hardest difficulty and enjoy the game the way you enjoy the game. Let other people enjoy the game the way others do. It doesn't change anything, especially for single player games. Thank you everyone for watching today's video. I really appreciate it. If you enjoyed this video, please subscribe to the channel. I really would appreciate it if you do. We're trying to hit 1,000 subscribers. Once we do, I'll be doing a Q&A video if you're interested. Like the video video if you like it, dislike it if you dislike it, I understand. Comment down below what you guys think about this whole easy mode or story mode or whatever you want to call it. I personally think it's totally fine, especially in single player games, to have modes like this. The more people who experience games and enjoy it, the better. And I just don't agree with the whole you cheated yourself or like learning the game or whatever people say. It's not up to them how other people enjoy video games. But if you like to check me out on other platforms, I have a Twitch, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, Blue Sky, and Threads. Thank you everyone for watching, and I'll see you next time. Goodbye, everyone.